Oil can mean many things to many people. Honestly, if I were to pick 10 customers and ask why oil analysis matters, I'd be likely to hear 10 different answers. That's one beautiful aspect about this business, too. You learn about the countless systems that rely on oil to do their job. And by interacting with the owner, we learn the story behind whatever it is they're sampling. A project car that a father and son are restoring together. A truck driver maintaining the rig they rely upon to make a living. Or an owner buying a brand new vehicle and using our analysis to track their investment's health from the first oil change till they need to move on. And to be sure, some samples are sent for that very reason, to make that decision to stay or leave with the engine they have. Just when you think you've seen it all, though, you stumble upon a sample or system that's new to you. I'm going to cover one of these very instances, and it's oil in a day's work.
If I say I'm an oil man, you will agree.
There's the stink of oil about him.
Welcome into episode 85, Oil in a Day's Work. Before I get rolling into the main event, I have a couple of housekeeping matters to attend to. First up, we have changed our bulk rates. So right now, if you're not a bulk customer and you simply order a standard analysis, that cost is $35 per analysis. So here's where the bulk discount comes in. If you pre-order 6 to 49 kits, you get the analysis for $32 per report. If you pre-order 50 to 99 kits, analysis drops to $30 per report. And if you order 100 or more kits, you will have a $27 charge per report. Bulk rates are especially relevant if you are a fleet owner or if you are on the industrial side. You have a lot of systems that you're trying to take care of, but they also matter if you're taking care of just one or two vehicles and you want to save, because here's the way bulk works at Blackstone. Think of it like past you looking out for future you, in the sense that you pre-order the analysis, but you do not need to send these kits back during a particular length of time. Let's say you want to take care of a vehicle or two, you pre-order 6 to drop that analysis cost down to $32. Well, now you have that credit remaining on your account whenever you need to use it. That way, should you want to hang on to it for the vehicle you own, or if you make a new purchase and you want to see how that vehicle's doing, whatever situation you're in, you can hang on to that credit and use it whenever the situation comes up and you have that discount rate locked in after you pre-order the analysis. So again, the rates vary depending on amount. So if you pre-order 6 to 49 kits, the cost of each report is $32. 50 to 99 kits pre-ordered means each analysis will run $30, and 100 or more kits pre-ordered will drop the price down to $27 per standard analysis. These bulk rates still apply if you like to add on a TBN or TAN. Any questions you may have about billing or bulk rates, feel free to give our offices a call at 260-744-2380. And that's not the only phone number I want to leave you with today. Remember the voicemail inbox for this show, 614-407-6169. I've mentioned this number in the past as a means for you to communicate show ideas or questions you may have, whatever you want me to answer on this show. But I also want to leave you with another idea, and that is to call and tell us what machine, application, what do you associate with oil analysis as a practice? As I mentioned in the opener, oil means many things to many people. But I think sometimes people get trapped in their own bubble, and they might think that oil analysis is only valuable to what they're familiar with. They might not even consider the fact that we can analyze the transmission oil as well as the engine oil, or that we can analyze gasoline, diesel fuel, coolant, brake fluid. I think many owners would be surprised at the varied ways in which our analysis can help people maintain whatever it is they own that needs oil to do its job. So give our voicemail a call. Again, that number is 614-407-6169. Let us know what oil analysis means to you. What is the system you're taking care of? What are you looking for in a report? Not only would we like to shout you out for supporting the show, but we also want to inform other customers from the owners themselves what oil analysis means, what they're using it for, and you never know. You may help someone find a reason to take a closer look at the vehicle, the aircraft, the boat, whatever it is that they need to maintain. Not only will the customers learn a thing or two, you can rest assured that we, behind the numbers, the analysts, we're learning something new every day. Even after looking at more samples than I can count, I'm still surprised at the oil types, the systems. It's simply never the same on a day-to-day basis. Maybe one day I'm stumbling across samples that are exclusively industrial in nature. Or maybe I'm looking at samples primarily from owners who are simply trying to take care of their daily driver. Every situation is unique, though, and we pay attention to what makes every situation unique, from the data right down to the clerical details. Just the other day, I was looking at a sample, double-checking to make sure we had the customer's address, their email correct, and thanks to a report where everything looked great, I saw the opportunity to make a connection with the customer that went beyond the numbers. In this case, I saw in their email address a reference to the film Pulp Fiction. As I stated before, everything looked great in the report, so I wasn't sacrificing any sort of opportunity to tell them about a problem or signs of a problem. Instead, I want to take a moment and make an inside joke that I figured odds were good the customer would understand. Again, the movie was Pulp Fiction, and the reference was specifically to Big Kahuna, the burger that you'll remember Samuel L. Jackson samples an early scene in the movie. So to open up the comment, I made a reference to how good the report looked, because it certainly did look good, and how it was about as good as a $5 milkshake from Jack Rabbit Slims. Thankfully, the customer did return my reference, letting us know they appreciated it, as well as the personal touch that we provide in our reports. We want to go beyond the numbers. We want to get to know the customer, especially if we can learn more about what it is they're sampling. At the end of the day, we're all students of what the oil can do, so we never want to act like we know it all, and we welcome the opportunity to find samples from systems that we may not be familiar with. So without further ado, the particular system that caught my eye was a passenger boarding bridge. These are hydraulic systems, and obviously we see a lot of hydraulic oils, but when I thought about it, I didn't think at first that, when you go to an airport, when you're boarding, and that very boarding bridge you use at the airport needs oil to do its job. We're talking about hydraulic oil, very thin products in general. Just for reference, this would be a 10 weight or an ISO 32. The nice thing about looking at samples like these is things are pretty simple in terms of what we're looking for. We're looking for very little metal and not a lot of solid material either. The reason being, these systems don't use splash lubrication. It's not like a gearbox per se. We're looking for insolubles that are very low. For reference, no more than 0.1% of the sample. These systems just can't handle that amount of solid material. It will prevent the oil from doing its job. And if the oil becomes overly oxidized, that solid material will turn the oil abrasive, and then all of a sudden, you can lose that system and run into costly repairs. The oil itself is certainly costly, and that's reason enough to analyze it. That way, you aren't changing it just based on the eye test. No, you need to go beyond the eye test and look at the solids, like I mentioned, that are very small in amount. Results that are going to be hard to evaluate with the naked eye. You certainly can't see the metals that we're analyzing, and that's something I like to remind customers of, is that we're looking at metals on a microscopic level. If you're seeing chunks or slivers or whiskers, that's problematic often in and of itself. And when we're finding the microscopic levels are high as well, well, then it adds up to a problem. We're looking for low metals and low insolubles, and if a sample meets specifications, then you can keep it in use. And that's music to the ears of many maintenance managers out there, especially when you're talking about an oil like this. Earlier, I mentioned viscosity. This is a 10-weight ISO 32 oil. Specifically, these were samples of Mobile Aero HFA. And this was news to me. This oil is $334 a gallon. We only need 3.5 ounces for sampling. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, a bulk rate can get that to an even cheaper price for you. You can knock that analysis cost down to as low as $27 instead of dumping an oil as expensive as Mobile Aero HFA, keeping it in use for another cycle, and then checking back to monitor and see, can I run that oil longer or should it be changed? Not only are you saving money on the oil itself, you're saving money on a potential system replacement. If the oil is left in use and it's accumulating a lot of metal, a lot of solid material, then that can lead to a failure or at the very least, expensive repairs. We understand that some customers are sending in a sample strictly to find out if the engine's about to blow up, and they might not want to delve too much into the intricacies of the results or how we arrive at the results. But then you have the other end of the spectrum, customers who want to comb through each and every element, trying to find any possible abnormality. Wherever you're coming from, we welcome the questions, whatever potential insight you have. The background info especially is particularly valuable to the analyst. And I have a recent example where the background info was especially important, and that was a sample from a BMW where overall things looked very good, but there was one abnormality that I was hoping to gain more insight on, and that was the presence of a lot of water. Now, when I say a lot, it's a lot to us in the sense that we can detect it and it's out of place. It's not like it was half of the sample bottle, but it was clearly evident in the way the sample responded during the flashpoint test. It visibly crackled, and it stands out, especially on our end. And it's all the more odd when we aren't seeing the markers of coolant contamination. If you're familiar with engines at all, the likely source of water, if there's a problem, is going to be coolant reaching the oil. Now, often we won't find the actual water when coolant has reached the oil because it cooks off as the engine warms up, but we'll still see the elemental markers of that very contaminant. So when we see water and there's not even a sign of coolant in the levels of potassium and sodium, we're left wondering why. In this instance, I figured it must have been introduced during sampling, and fortunately, that was the case. The customer reached out after we pointed out why it was confusing, and it turns out they had to store the sample temporarily before the kit arrived. And we understand this happens, and it's totally fine to do. We just want to know whenever it is applicable, just so we can consider whatever impact that had on the report. So in this case, the customer had to rinse out a container, I believe, of windshield washer fluid. And I think it can surprise people, just the small levels of moisture or any other contaminant that can still register. So this was maybe the customer's first or second sample. And really, all that was important to us was knowing the background, knowing the likelihood of that moisture being introduced during sampling, because we had a good feeling that the engine didn't have a problem. A, there was no sign of coolant, but B, the engine looked great. If water was lingering, it would keep the oil from doing its job. It would likely cause rapid oxidation, and by way of oxidation, poor wear, so on and so forth. None of that. Just a contaminant that had a likely explanation. And we were able to learn what it was. And it's that interaction, that back and forth between customer and analyst that often sets our business apart. That brings today's show to a close. Again, I encourage you to reach out if you are a return customer or if you're thinking about sending in a sample. Let us know what oil analysis means to you. What are you using it for? What's the vehicle or aircraft you're taking care of? Not only may we be surprised by a couple of the answers, I'm sure that many listeners will too. Now it's about time I get back to the data. This is Blackstone Joe, signing off.